The first thing you need to know about Bonnie and Clyde's final act isn't the gunfire, or the screech of tires, or even the headlines that followed. It's what happened in the aftermath, a bullet-riddled Ford on a lonely Louisiana roadside growing quiet as dusk settles and the legend starts to ooze. Literally, into the dirt. The cinematic showdown might get all the attention, but if you think the story ends there, buckle up because the clean Hollywood fade-out hides just how much messier, stickier, and stranger the reality got once the bullets stopped. You might picture Bonnie and Clyde's end as some kind of tragic movie tableau, the glamorous outlaws lying hand in hand in peaceful repose. But on the other side of that split screen is the real scene. Blood, torn fabric, and chaos so thick you'd need a mop before you'd need a camera. That's where we're going to the backstage of American legend. Let's drop you straight onto the floor of the Conger Funeral Home in Arcadia, Louisiana, the 23rd of May, 1934. Forget the marble halls. This place is a cramped, two-room setup with worn linoleum underfoot, cheap fans barely stirring the swamp air, and two battered metal tables already slick with blood and embalming chemicals. Outside, the crowd is swelling fast, locals, reporters, and every looky-loo from miles around, all desperate for a peek at the carnage that just rewrote outlaw history. Inside, Bonnie and Clyde aren't the main characters anymore. That title belongs to C.B., Boots, Bailey, and Dillard Darby, the two local undertakers suddenly in charge of the most infamous corpses in America. Until noon, these guys were used to the routine, a tractor rollover here, a fever death there, maybe a family gathering to grieve. Nothing in their careers prepared them for what arrived on those tables. Bodies so riddled with holes, so battered by the ambush, that the blood still leaks as the car is dragged in from the roadside. This is where the movies always cut away or fade to black. But the ugly truth is, the first thing to hit you in that room isn't the mythic gun smoke or some tragic romance, it's the overwhelming smell. A stew of fresh blood, sweat, gunpowder, and the first sweet hints of decay. And there's no time for ceremony. The lawmen have barely left before people start crowding at the windows, banging on the door, offering money just to touch the car, or, if they're feeling bold, to touch the bodies themselves. It's chaos, and the main event hasn't even started. The practical question comes quick. How do you handle two bodies so shot up, so chewed through by bullets, they're leaking from every angle? Clyde Barrow is a forensic nightmare, wounds packed so closely you can't count the entry from the exit. Bonnie Parker, already limping from an old burn, is now so torn up she makes a rural road sign look pristine. And it's not just blood pooling out bits of tissue, bone fragments, and soon enough, the mortician's best attempts at embalming fluid join the mix. Don't look for dignity here. Bailey and Darby are forced to strip Bonnie and Clyde right where they lay, hacking away clothing with shears sticky from the last job. What they find underneath is, by every account, a horror show. Skin peeled back by bullets, limbs bent at angles no living person could manage, wounds gaping like spoiled fruit. Those battered tables weren't built for this kind of work. Even moving the bodies leaves fresh streaks of blood trailing to the floor. And now the nightmare really kicks in. Normally, embalming is a controlled process. Inject, massage, seal the arteries, make the body presentable for public display. Not here. Every time Bailey tries to pump in the embalming solution, it spurts right back out another hole, soaking towels dripping onto the linoleum, forcing the morticians to grab whatever cotton, gauze, or rags they can find. The room turns slick, their sleeves get stained up to the elbows, and the chemical stink of formaldehyde hangs in the air, fighting a losing battle against the heat and stench. Outside, the crowd gets louder, impatient, excited, and just a little unhinged. Inside, the question shifts from, can we make them look presentable? To, can we keep them from falling apart at all? Plug one hole. Two more start to weep. Embalming fluid meant to preserve turns into puddles under the tables, soaking through towels faster than they can be replaced. Dignity? Out the window. This is a frantic scramble. Time, sweat, and the creeping sense that nothing's working. If you want to picture the scene, you can almost see sweat rolling down Boots Bailey's face as he bends over Clyde, jamming cotton into a wound, only for that precious fluid to bubble right back out and run down onto his shoes. In that moment, arterial solution doesn't sound like a technical term. It sounds like the punchline to a very grim joke. Meanwhile, the crowd outside is shifting from morbid curiosity to full-blown mania. At first, it's just the hum voices yelling, faces pressed to glass, flashbulbs popping. Then someone manages to wedge the door open, and in comes a wave of heat, dust, and humanity. Some locals try to slip inside for a closer look or a closer grab. Newspaper accounts say it straight. People didn't just want to see Bonnie and Clyde. They wanted something to take home. Hair, cloth, buttons, whatever wasn't nailed down. The era's version of celebrity merch, only with a serious hazard of getting splattered with something you don't want on your Sunday best. Inside, Bailey and Darby are juggling tasks no mortician ever planned for. They try everything, plugging wounds with cotton, stuffing exit holes with wax, tying off limbs and hoping pressure will slow the leaks. It's like patching a rowboat riddled with buckshot, using napkins and wishful thinking. Every wound they fix is a new surprise. Bonnie's old burn is so ragged it won't hold a dressing. Every touch leaves more skin behind. Clyde's face, the big trophy for the crowd, needs constant repacking just to keep any human shape at all. The men are sweating, hands trembling, muttering under their breath, mostly drowned out by the pounding from outside. And the fluids just keep coming, mixing on the floor into a sticky, shimmering mess of blood, formaldehyde, and whatever else is inside a human body at 90 degrees Fahrenheit. The air is so thick it stings the eyes. Flies gather at the windows, undeterred by all the chemicals or the frantic motion of morticians' hands. You know things have gone sideways when the best tool in the funeral home is a mop bucket. Of course, the crowd isn't waiting for perfection. They're not really waiting at all. Lawmen and undertakers have to physically push back onlookers, trying to reach through the prep room door. Some want to gawk. Others want to snip a lock of hair or pocket a blood-stained button. Tempers flare. One man yells he deserves a look at America's most famous criminals. Another woman tries to pass her baby through the window, just for a glimpse. It's not only grotesque, it's dangerous. Bailey and Darby hunch over their work, forced to ignore the circus because every minute that passes, the bodies decay faster. Louisiana heat, open wounds, failing embalming time is the enemy here, and it's not on their side. With every failed repair, the stress ratchets up. One towel soaks through, swap in another. Patch of cotton saturated, stuff in a bigger wad. There's no rhythm here, just a panicked, repetitive slapdash dance. And this right here is the literal cost of outlaw celebrity. You become the main event, even in death, and the crowd expects a show, not a crime scene. The press leans in for their pictures. Flashes burst and fade, exposing everything the morticians can't hide. Faces gone pale and slick, hands warped, wounds still weeping under the glare. By now, the mortuary is a grotesque assembly line. Patch one wound, another springs a leak. Wipe one side of a face, the other starts to sag from the early stages of decomposition. The chemicals are just holding the disaster together barely. The morticians keep going, sleeves rolled, aprons filthy, eyes watering from a mix of heat, grief, and chemical fumes. The truth is inescapable. Bonnie and Clyde are coming apart faster than anyone can put them back together. Here's the hard midpoint. The more they pump, patch, and wipe, the worse the mess gets. None of the morticians' tools were meant for this. These weren't bodies meant to be displayed for hours under the hot lights and the stares of hundreds. The crowd grows, the odor thickens, and frantic improvisation just means more ruined towels and buckets full of failed repairs. Outlaw fame isn't measured in headlines. It's measured in mop buckets, stained cotton, and the faces of men who didn't sign up for any of this. At one point, I can't help but look to camera. Hollywood skips this part. In the movie, you get a single tragic shot. In the real version, you get a dozen patch jobs, 100 ruined towels, and a funeral home that's going to smell like regret for weeks. And the worst is still ahead, the final public display, when all that frantic work has to hold up under the gaze of a crowd hungry for legend, not prepared for reality. And then, ready or not, the doors open. The public display begins. The townsfolk, souvenir hunters, and reporters surge forward in lines that snake down the block, everyone desperate to see the infamous dead. Bailey and Darby retreat out of sight, tense, knowing just how fragile the scene really is. Even now, wounds weep from the strain, cotton bulges, fluids, stained clothing. There's no way to hide the chemical sheen on those faces, the slackness where skin is already slipping. If a gawker gets too eager, it'll all come undone. The smell is now a character of its own, a heavy, cloying blend of rot and formaldehyde that lingers in the back of your throat. Some people grit their teeth for a better look. Others, more morbid still, reach out to touch the hands, the hair. Even the wounds like it's worth a little filth for a brush with outlaw legend. At least one person tries to snip a lock of Bonnie's hair. Clyde's tie gets stolen. The morticians try to wave people off, but there's no controlling the crush. Dignity, whatever was left, is ground underfoot by the curious and the shameless. Meanwhile, the reporters snap photograph after photograph, some destined for the front page, others for the archives, and some for the backroom trade in the truly morbid. The air grows hotter, the crowd thicker, and every so often a repair fails. A dark spot blooms on a sleeve, a droplet rolls down a cheek and splats onto the floor. The morticians dab and patch between viewers, but it's a losing battle. The movie myth of the outlaw, all heroic tragedy, gets anchored forever to this sticky, ugly, hopelessly physical reality. Some witnesses leave pale, hands covering their noses. Others head out grinning, claiming they've seen history with their own eyes. But for Bailey, Darby, the families, and anyone close enough to smell the truth, one thing is clear. This isn't the ending anyone would have chosen. Bonnie and Clyde's legacy, at least here, is not rebellion or romance. It's the wreckage of bodies that won't stay together, on display for a crowd that won't stay away. After the crowd thins, after the final photo, what's left is aftermath. towels and aprons soaked and tossed, floors sticky, the air still sour. The morticians are left to clean up, to dress the bodies for transport and burial, to claw back a little privacy for two lives and deaths that never really had any. Even the funerals are spectacles, drawing huge crowds, press elbowing for the next scoop, and the legend only widens from there. But if you scrape away the myth, if you put aside the stylized shootout and the tragic close-ups, this is what the afterlife of Bonnie and Clyde really looked like. Two people, trapped by their own fame, turned into the worst kind of logistical nightmare. The mortician's ordeal is a stubborn reminder that outlaw celebrity never ends with a beautiful corpse. Sometimes it ends with frantic patch jobs, public spectacle, and a cleanup that lasts long after the headlines fade. So next time you see the movie version, with the poetic fade to black and the beautiful corpses, remember, the real price of outlaw fame was paid in mop buckets, cotton batting, ruined towels, and the exhausted faces of the people stuck cleaning up the legend. When the gunfire fades and the headlines dim, all that's left is the work gritty, necessary, unforgettable. If you want more of these stories, what happens when the legend stops and the mop buckets come out? Subscribe for history stripped to the bone. And if you made it through this tale without wrinkling your nose, you're already tougher than half the crowd in Arcadia on that infamous day.